Great to be back. I was taking a similar session last year as well in the first Damit session. Uh, let's try to keep the same enthusiasm as we had last year. Uh, so this literally sounds like an interview that I have to give my intro. But hey guys, I'm Shubhang. I am a self-taught designer. I have been in the design industry for 4 years now. 2 years freelance and 2 years while working in a job. So yeah, that's basically about me. And I'm also an engineer. I have an engineering background. So all the engineers, you can type a one in the chat, so I can know how many engineers are here. If there are any designers as well, great to see them over here. This is going to be an introduction to branding and logo design. Uh, just going over the session overview. Uh, the Basically we'll be covering what a brand is, what basically what a brand is, how do you differentiate a brand from any other entity, what makes a brand, and then we would talk about what is logo design, what are different types of logos, and we'll also look at a case study which involves the entire process, which I basically use for logo design. It's not like a hard and fast process, but at least it works for me. So I hope it works for you guys as well. So yeah, so I think let's get started. I'll just shift to my presentation. Let me know if you can view it. I'll just go full screen as well. Yeah, I hope this is visible to everyone. If there is any issues, just like put it in the chat. I can actually check it out as well. Okay, so yeah, I think let's get started. Let's get started with the topic. So yeah, introduction to branding and logo design. Of course, the first question: what is brand? I mean, this word gets thrown around a lot. Oh yeah, like this thing is branded. I got branded XYZ things and all. But do you really know what a brand is? It's not just a logo. Spoiler alerts: it's not a logo. But a brand, I think the really like a really nice definition of a brand is given by Martin Neumier. He's the author of The Brand Gap, which is a great book, by the way. If you're interested in branding, you should really check that book out. It's really nice. So how he defines a brand is that a brand is a person's gut feeling about a service or an organization. So now you would say, okay, that is that is there, but can you elaborate? Like, gut feeling sounds quite vague, right? Like, a brand is a gut feeling about a service or an organization. Like, what does that mean? So I'll just give you an example on this so that you can easily grasp this. So imagine these two brands which you see, Uber and Ola. These two have almost the same services. Okay, the only thing which is different about them is their branding is different. And because their branding is different, you would perceive Uber or you would perceive Ola both in a different way. Like, Uber could communicate better with you or Ola could communicate better with you. It just depends on their branding. So for example, over here, like for me, Uber, like I perceive Uber as something which is more reliable, more trustworthy, more safe. So that is why Uber communicates better with me, but for you, maybe Ola would communicate better with you. So in the end, a brand is what you perceive. Like, you are defining the brand. So how, so you actually have the power, like your perception defines that brand in the end. So how would Uber, like, then you would say, like, then how would Uber justify if their branding is correct? if I'm perceiving Uber as safety, like as something which is safe, trustworthy, and reliable, and if that is how they want to be perceived, then their branding is bang on. That is the end goal of branding, so that the end consumer perceives the brand as the brand wants them to perceive it. It can sound a little like mumbo jumbo, but if it does, let me know. I'm also checking the chats if you have any doubts on this. So, moving on, now we understand what a brand is. I'll also show a differentiation between a brand and any entity. Like like you cannot just go out there, and if you just go out there and you start selling a pen under a name like Shubhang Rajput's pens. So that is not a brand. That is just going out and selling things under an entity is not a brand. A brand has personality. A brand is more human. It's not just a name. It does not lack emotion. It has emotion. Here's a quick example. ITC actually owns Bingo, by the way. But like, if I ever ask you, uh, give me three adjectives to define ITC, would you be able to do that? Because I think, like, this is from, of course, from my experience. I have not seen ITC branding anywhere. Like, not the logo branding, as in, like, I've not seen anything which will help me understand. Okay, their personality is XYZ. So, so that is kind of like an entity. Like, it owns Bingo, but it does not have its own personality. But then when I ask you to give me maybe some personality points for Bingo, you would be able to, like, say, okay, it's very joyful, it's playful, it's tangy. So all these adjectives will come out quite easily because they are branded that way. They have a personality which shows. So that is like a quick differentiation between any entity and a brand. So now we know what a brand is, like, at least not like at least at a layer point of view. So what is branding? Like, what is brand identity then? So in very simple layman terms, like, you will find 10,000 definitions for this. Uh, but in very simple and layman terms, it is a process of making, I think there is an error over here. It should be entity than a company. It is the process of making an entity more human like, giving it personality, giving it, like, emotion, so that you can relate to it. Because in the end, people trust people. Okay, people will trust people, and people will buy from people who have charming personalities, not robots. Like, you cannot just go out and like, go to doors knocking and just say, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. They won't buy it. It needs to have some personality. It needs to have some story. It needs to have some substance behind it. So, like, this is the entire base which a brand revolves around: having personality, being relatable to the customer. So I hope that that section is clear. If it is not, I am reading the chats. Please ask me any questions. I don't mind answering them at all. But if there are no questions, then we would be moving forward to the next phase, which is a brand's anatomy. Because I have been mentioning a brand is a human, a brand is a human. So here's a literal comparison between a human's anatomy and a brand's anatomy. So I hope all the previous sections are clear. I'll be moving on with this one then. Uh, I don't see any doubts, so that's great. Okay, so as you can see, there are two sides of a brand's anatomy. One is something which is on the inside, which is the brand strategy, which has like personality, positioning, visions, values, something which you cannot like maybe touch and feel on a surface level. But then on the other side, there is visual identity, something which you can see, like logo design, brand colors, typography, imagery. So these are the two different sections under a brand, like brand strategy and brand visual identity. So, of course, the first thing which we would start with is brand strategy. अंदर की जो बात है, that is something which we have to define first before we get into visual identity. So now, what is brand strategy? Sounds quite interesting. Strategy बोल दिया तो बस like it feels like, oh damn, we are doing some big brain stuff. So it is kind of big brain stuff. Uh, but you can easily tackle it with a few simple steps I'll be mentioning the next slides. But basically, what brand strategy includes is a brand's personality, a brand's positioning, vision, purpose, values, and it has to also understand the market, basically where the brand stands. So that is the market research. So all these words might sound like jargon, but trust me, I'll break them down for you in the next slides. So how do we proceed with brand strategy then? It's quite simple. It is research and Q&A. And uh, as you can see, it is very accurately showcased over here how Q&A happens. You literally bonk your client with questions. And coming to questions, I'll be, of course, showing what all questions you will be asking your clients. But it also, of course, involves research as well. So it's not like you are just bonking the client with questions. You have to do something from your end as well. So this is basically the process of how you would go on with brand strategy. The first step is, of course, questioning. The second would be feedback, structure, research. So this might sound like, oh damn, kya hai ye? This is too much. What is happening in this? So let me give you a quick example of how this works. So here's an example. Imagine like I'm asking my client this question. Uh, how do you want your customers to perceive your brand? Okay, so this is the questioning. This is the first stage. The feedback is what the client gives me as an answer. The client says, uh, I want my users, I want my customers to perceive us as something which is very warm, friendly, and uh, we don't come under the fast food chain. Like this is basically for a food app. Let's keep that in mind. This is for a food app. So they are saying that we don't come under fast food chain. We want the user to feel very warm and homely. So from this feedback, I have to break down the answer to understand what all things the client has actually provided me. So I structure the answer now. Basically, what I've understood is the client has given me some adjectives, which is warm, homely. It shouldn't like it should be trustworthy. So these are some adjectives. And then another point which he has mentioned, that they don't want to get into the fast food zone or anything like that. So that is another point. So I've broken the answer down into two things. Now comes the research part. What is like, how would I research into this? Basically, the part where he mentioned about the fast food area, like why doesn't he want to go into the fast food area? I would first research the fast food area, like what is happening over there, and then after that research I will question him back. Why, like why don't you want to go into that area? Like, is there a reason behind it? So this, once this loop keeps on continuing, I keep on getting more and more and more precise answers. So having more precise answers enables me to understand the brand better, to understand what I am building better. So that is how this loop goes on. So I hope like that heavy subject is quite clear now. If it is not, I'm again reading the chats. If there is anything, I'll just let me know. Okay, so I mentioned in the previous slide about the questioning. Uh, So how do you question things and what do you question? So I've actually made a list of questions like uh, you can ask your clients, and these questions will enable you to get information on the following things which I've mentioned on the right hand side, which is like brand summary, brand USP, brand values. So these questions will give you the answers to those pointers which you require to build that brand strategy. So I don't think I'll be going through all these questions one by one. But I'll just like take an example. For example, let's take why does it matter and what sets you apart. So this, like as I mentioned over here, this will give you the brand USP and values, but you might not get the exact answer on the first end. For example, if I ask my client like why does your brand matter and what sets you apart, they might say yeah, because we are the best in the industry, and uh, we make things which are in the color blue which we like. So that is not really setting you apart that much. So you have to then break that answer down, you have to research on it, then you have to again question the client. Okay, then why, like what is the significance of blue, and what is the significance of XYZ thing. So that is how the process will go for each of these questions. But the end outcome should be what I've mentioned on the right hand side. So hope this makes sense, because brand strategy is a little heavy subject. So it can go a little like this. So just let you know if that is happening. Okay, so once you are done with your initial questioning, research, and all that entire churn, the end outcome of a brand strategy workshop could be a brand strategy guide, where sorry, where you will mention the end, like where you will mention all the information which you have gathered through the entire process, which could be, of course, the brand summary, personality, values, vision, and positioning. All these things noted down in a single booklet, which will be given to the client, and that is how your brand strategy cycle will end. Of course, this is a very on surface stage, because there are 10,000 more things in brand strategy. But for an intro session, I hope this makes sense for you. Okay, so now we are done with brand strategy. जो अंदर की बात थी वो हो गई है. Now we come to the looks, like what you can see on the outside for a brand, and that would be, of course, logo, the first thing you see. The second thing, typography, imagery, brand colors, brand patterns. So over here, I've explicitly made logo design bold, and I've mentioned it like it is the face of the brand. Like a logo design is the face of the brand. And why have I done that? Why is typography not the face of the brand? Why is imagery not the face of the brand? So let me explain that in detail, because the next thing which we will be tackling is logo design. So here's an example. If there is a guy named Rahul, how would you remember? Like, of course, you can remember this guy through maybe the way he talks, maybe the way he walks. But uh, at a glance, how would you recognize him? Of course, by his face. So it is like your face, a face of a human is also something which helps you recognize that human at a glance. It also has some key personalities. For example, you can maybe look at me and tell, okay, this guy jokes a lot or whatever. So it has one, two personality points as well. So that is mainly why I I mentioned that the logo is the face of the brand, because at a glance it gives you like a gist of how the brand is and what the brand is. So that is why the comparison. And here's something which I would like to ask you. I think everyone knows this logo. I hope they know this logo. If not, you're living under a rock, I assume. I hope you're not living under a rock. But just type in the chat what are the adjectives you can give me for this logo. Just by looking at the logo, what can you tell me about the brand? I'll be checking the chats for this. Hmm, I think people are actually living under rocks, and that is fine. Not an issue. Uh, so I don't think anyone has replied on that. No worries. So I think at a glance you can maybe say this is dynamic. This is dynamic. This can show speed. This can show, you know. Yeah. Now I think everyone just started messaging. Yeah, like Siddharth says, just do it. Debrupa says speed, active, and like a very bold attitude. So that is what you're getting from just a logo. So that is like how basically you're defining the entire brand from just a logo. Like these are the points you're just getting from this small icon. So that is how the logo helps to be the face of the brand. Now, this is something which I think everyone knows. A Nike logo is, of course, everyone knows that. How would you define this logo? Because this logo is something I assume not many of you must have seen. So, how would you define this logo? I would like to see that. This is just to show you how you are you can define a brand through just the logo. Playful, homely, cute, compact, compact. Okay, that's nice. Happy. Yep. So I think all of you are on point because the this is for a branding I done for Home Grub, and their brand personality revolves around homely, warm, joyful, loving, generous, and genuine, like honesty, caring. So the fact that you could guess what the brand is just by looking at the logo says that the logo is successful in delivering the branding at a face value. So that is how you spot good logos, or that is how you make good logos. So now that I've touched the point of a logo being a face of the brand, let's actually touch what a logo is, like in theory. So Leo Burnett says anything that leaves a mental picture of a brand's identity. That exercise which I had before, like the two Nike and Home Grub, that is basically the that exercise is like explaining the definition Leo has given over here. And these are, like, you can see all these examples over here. These are the different types or the different classifications of logos. Of course, there it can be a little messy as well in this. It's not hard and fast. All these classifications aren't hard and fast. But just to give you a quick example of how these are classified, letter marks are basically acronyms. Like HBO is home box office, of course. So acronyms made into a logo is a letter mark. A word mark is the entire name of the brand written into a typographically creative manner. Uh, yeah, I think Siddharth has a question how letter marks are different from a word mark. Yeah, so I just explained. So a letter mark is uh, basically a typographically creative form of putting the acronyms of the brand. Like home box office is the entire brand name, but you put it as HBO, so it's the acronym. Or you can also call it the initials of a brand. Uh, and a word mark is the complete brand name, which is written in a typographically creative manner. Then what is a monogram, you would say? A monogram is like a mesh of these initials. For example, Louis Vuitton, how the two initials have been merged together. So it's not uh, It's not like three, four letters, five, six letters coming together or anything like that. It's two, like it's at least two letters or three letters combining into one thing. Hence the name monogram. It's one. It's everything combining to make one thing. Then pictorial marks is something, basically how a pictorial mark is different from an abstract mark is pictorial marks is something you can recognize. For example, an apple is a shape you would recognize. A Twitter bird is something you could recognize. But the Adidas symbol or the Pepsi symbol is something which is up for debate. Like you can think, okay, it's a wave, it's a giant wave, it's the sun, it's anything. You can debate on it forever. Like those are what abstract marks are. Then emblems are, I think, quite self-explanatory, and even mascots are quite self-explanatory. I hope that clears the types of logos. If there are any questions, you can of course ask me in the chat. Uh, I'll be checking chat. Yeah, I think that's fine. Then I'll move ahead in life. Okay, so here's a slide of me being a very big narcissist. Uh, Basically, here I'll be talking about some pointers which are seen in good logo, some pointers which are seen in bad logo. But also to keep the balance, all the bad logos which you see over here are made by me. So the logo which you see, the Win is Jobs, that was my first logo ever. That was my first logo. It's basically a poster, I think, like when I look at it. But then the Burgeon Wings marketing, I was really proud of that. But it's an illustration, not a logo now. But yeah, you have to make shit in order to understand its shit. So here are some few points which you can see in good logos. Of course, these logos and the good logos which you see are jumbled up with the corporate logos like Windows, Microsoft, and some are mine. But the main pointers over here are try to keep it as simple as possible so that it is easily reproducible, because these logos will not only go on business cards, these would also go on big banners, these would go on anything like packaging, app icons. It can be even printed in 3D. So the more complex you make it, the more difficult it is to reproduce the logo. And then of course any logo has to be easy to remember, because like if you have like 10,000 things inside a logo, after a point I won't know how to even define that logo. And one point which I always talk about is like any logo which you make should be at least enough easy that even a child can try drawing it. Like even the basic shape, like they should at least, for example, the home grub logo, like it is a little complex, it is not the easiest logo, but at least the child will be able to make maybe a kettle, a heart, and a face. At least that is clear. Like you can define it by some elements at least. uh, Not so good logos generally tend to be quite complex, as you can see. They don't possess any brand attributes. You remember how we covered the brand personality, how we were defining the logos with adjectives. So all these not so good logos, they don't tend to have any adjectives at all. They are just made just for the sake of it. And some of these are kind of like art. How would you define art? Art is something which you use to express yourself. It is not quite problem solving as a design is. So, for example, the technology for future cities, that logo is not a logo. That has 10,000 things inside it. So, it's basically an art project over there. So, I hope like this this kind of gives you a quick summary on how to make good logos. Of course, I'll be going through the entire process, but these are just some few points that I touched. You guys must be thinking this now. बहुत बोल लिया अभी शुभांग ने, बहुत पका लिया यार. ठीक है, समझ गया अभी. प्लीज 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 अब बताओ कैसे बनाते हैं लोगोस. And to that I will say give me 20 seconds. I want to drink water. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started with the process. Uh, the process, as you can see, it is an eight-step process. Quite simple, honestly, not rocket science. Basically, over here, I've also highlighted that the first three steps, the briefing, questionnaire, research, and rebriefing stage, is the brand strategy stage. So I'll brush on that later, why it is called the brand strategy stage. But just keep this in mind that it's an eight-step process. Generally, your process, or maybe your journey, will start with something like this. It will, like, it's very rare that a client would know what branding is, and that is totally fine. You don't need to bash a client for not knowing what branding is, or you don't need to bash a client for their lack of knowledge for design, because they it's not their job to come prepared on that. वो लोग को एग्जाम नहीं देना है. So generally you would get something like this, like, can you make me a logo, can you make me a business card, anything like that. So how do you process this? Firstly, so uh, the first thing which you would do is not that, can you make me a logo. You won't say like, you won't say, yeah, yeah, I can make a logo, and then you just start like making logos. That is not how things would work out that well, because trust me, I've tried that and it results in bad things over the time. So the first thing which you would do, okay, would be getting a proper briefing and getting that questionnaire in. So, as I've also mentioned over here, you can only solve a problem when you know the problem. So, understanding the problem is the essence of, before you start designing for that problem. So we have divided columns. Basically, one is called as pain points, and one is called brand strat straight up. So let's go over the pain points. So once you get that message from your client, or once your client asks you, can you make me a logo? The first thing which you would do is understand why he needs that logo, understand what his business is about. Tell me, like, you ask him, tell me about your business. Why did you reach out to me? Like, of course you won't you won't ask him like, hey, mere paas kai ko aaya, and all. Not like that. You would ask him like, is there anything specific that made you reach out to me? Like, you would understand his expectations, you would understand why this logo will help him, and eventually you will ask him, why don't you need a complete branding? I have highlighted that question because at that point the client will अंडरस्टैंड कि ओके, ब्रांडिंग नाम की चीज एग्जिस्ट करती है जो लोगो नहीं है. नहीं तो दे वुड थिंक दैट ब्रांडिंग इज अ लोगो, which is a no. So you have to educate them over there. Like, when you ask them that question, there will be a pause generally, and they will ask you, okay, what does branding include? And then you will tell them, okay, branding includes brand strategy. We will be working on your brand personality. We will be working on understanding your brand values, your vision, where your brand is headed in the future. So you will educate a client with those things. And once that is in place, once they are aware about it, you would then nudge them to understand, okay, now you know what branding is, at least at the surface level. Can you tell me what are the problems with your current branding, if you have any? Then that basically, over here in this column, you're just trying to understand this person, you're just trying to understand what their issue is so that you can solve this issue. And of course, the last question is, how would you justify the success of this project? Basically, understanding the objectives so that there is, like, everyone is on the single page. And once these pain points are discussed with the clients, as you can see in the next column, it's written brand strategy. Now you would say, okay, Shubhang, brand strategy is something which we covered before. अपन क्यों कर रहे हैं ये, मेरे को नहीं देखने का है, ये मेरे को इतना पढ़ाई नहीं करना है एक दिन में. I understand. So brand strategy is again required over here because at this point you have to assume that the client might not have a brand, or if they have a brand, they might be having issues with the brand, because if they are coming to you for a logo design or some anything which is related to branding, typography or imagery, there might be some issues with the branding. So that is why, again, you have to always start with the brand strategy process. Brand strategy will always come first, because you need to have some base to make the logo design. You need to have something to work on. So all these questions which I mentioned over here in brand strat are the same questions which we looked at before in the brand strategy section. So I'll be just glancing over it at the moment. So as I mentioned uh, in the previous slide, you need something to start with. You need some base to make that logo. This is a process for logo designing, but you need to have some aspect of the brand in order to make the logo, because in the end, if you call sorry if in the end you want to call the logo as the face of the brand, it needs to have some personality, right? Like, it cannot be just bland. So you have to define certain aspects of the brand before you start even designing the logo. So as I mentioned, you will be continuing the strategy section. In the beginning, the questionnaires will be done. Once the questionnaire is made, you do the entire research and Q&A section with the client, which I mentioned in the strategy section. And once you are done, this example, in this case study, we are taking that example of a home, basically like a food service, which gives you home cooked meals like tiffins. So this is the case study, just giving you some context. So the research which I mentioned, the research and all the questionnaires, from that you will get the answers, and all these answers will end up being collected into a rebrief. So which I've mentioned over here, like what is a rebrief now? So a rebrief is basically a combination of all the pain points which you have discussed. All the answers are, by the way, not the questions. It is all the answers for the pain points which you have got. It is all the answers for the brand strat which you have got, and it is a mood board which you showcase to the client. And on the left hand side, you can also see the research bit. Basically, this is kind of what the market research looks on a surface level. This is not all what it is, but this is just understanding who the competitors are in the market. For example, Zomato, Swiggy, O Daily, like all these were our competitors when we were looking at a new brand which will be entering the home foods section. So I mentioned the rebrief over there. So the rebrief should be including all these points which I mentioned over here. So what this acts, the rebrief acts as, is it acts as the Bible for your entire project. So moving on, you have something to refer to. You have all the pain points mentioned in one place, the entire brand strategy mentioned in one place, and a mood board which the client agrees on. So that is very important. Like, this ensures that everyone uh, in this project, involved in the project, is on the same page, so that you understand the problem well before you try to solve it. This step ensures that. So okay, now we have our references in place. Once we have that in place, now we can start designing. Now we can start doing the fun stuff. So again, taking the example uh, uh, of that home food app, basically, uh, what we were tasked for over here was to, of course, start with the logo design, then make the entire branding. So the first step is in designing, after you get the rebriefing done, is the ideation stage, where you also, like, you can also sketch if you feel comfortable with digital design, like ideating digitally, that's fine. But generally, sketching will help you get a natural design much easier. So that is why even I kind of prefer sketching over here. So how do you go on with this? Because at face value, this seems about like you can just keep on sketching ideas and all. If you would be in the design, like if you are a designer, then you would understand how difficult it is to sketch these different new ideas. So how do you do that? Like, is there a process for that? So I've actually noted these pointers down to showcase the process of how I do it. So firstly, I put down a gist of the brief before I start. Like, for example, I would put in the first image, in the biggest image, which you can see, I have put down some personality pointers. For example, motherly, genuine, generous, happy, should be expandable. Like all these points I have put down, and then what I have done is that I have made three different directions below that, which state word mark should be like word mark, and then below that word mark I've mentioned a few personality points. For example, like home style, clean, genuine. Then the second direction is a symbol direction, third direction is a mixed direction. So setting these broad directions according to some personality points will help you make different options more easily, so that in the beginning itself you're making three funnels, and in these three funnels you'll start putting these options, these sketch options. And then how I generally start sketching is I just sketch the obvious out. For example, again, in the first page, you can see in the biggest page, I have drawn a house, I've drawn like a chef's hat, I've drawn a fun face over there down below. So all these small elements help you just get started off. Like, okay, I can then play with the chef hat, I can then play with the smiley face, the bowl. So like that is how you start off, and then once you like a concept, the best way of improving that would be just make that concept five more times. For example, in the last page you can see I've made the same face and the kettle almost 10 times, so that I can get the easier, like the most simplest format out of it. And again, like your sketches don't need to be great. Honestly, I am quite bad at sketching. It should just give you a quick understanding of how the logo should be, because this sketching is for you, not for the client. So once you're done with the ideation stage, you would be moving forward to the digitalization stage. And before I even go to this, I just want to understand, is there any doubts first? And is the stream clear, by the way? I am actually looking at the stream and it seems a little blurry. So that is why I want to understand. Is there a problem? I'm looking at the chats. Okay. Okay. Seems like the quality is fine. Cool, cool. I think it's maybe my net that I cannot see that. Okay, so Abhay has asked a question, by the way. Is there any alternative to sketching? So there, as I mentioned, there is an alternative to sketching. You can directly start it off on Illustrator as well. It's up to you. The main objective of sketching is to get as many ideas out as possible in the shortest amount of time. And like I, because I have done both of these, I've tried making it directly on Illustrator, and I've tried sketching as well. And from both, I have realized that sketching generally helps me come up with more ideas than directly doing it on Illustrator. Because on Illustrator, then you will get into the details, like what tools do I have to use, XYZ. You can even use Procreate, by the way, for this. Again, it's again sketching, but you can again use Procreate as well for the ideation stage. So yeah, I think the ideation stage is clear, and the stream also seems clear, I feel, as per these guys, as per the chat. So let's move on to the digitalization stage. So in the digitalization stage, we open up Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so this is where we open up our designing software. Uh, a quick question over here would be, Shubhang, why not Photoshop? Can I use Photoshop? I only know Photoshop. Can I make logos on Photoshop? Yes, you can, but I would suggest against it because here's a quick differentiation between Illustrator and Photoshop. Basically, Photoshop will help you design things in raster graphics, and Illustrator will help you design things in vector graphics. Now, what is the difference between both of these things? There is a vast difference. Uh, so basically, in vector graphics, vectors, I think if there are engineers over here, you might have heard this, what a vector is, because we had this in mechanical engineering. Uh, these vector points are actually defined by nodes which are made by mathematical formulas. Okay, so these things are made by formulas and they can be scaled up and down quite easily. Basically, to put it in a nutshell, vector graphics do not pixelate. They don't pixelate if even if you stretch it, even if you scale it how much ever, they would never pixelate. And raster graphics would pixelate. So that is just an easy way to differentiate both of them. And now, why should we not make logos on Photoshop? Because most of the logos which you would make would be required on a surface would be which would be as small as a business card, like this small, or it can also be on a banner which is like this big. So there is a lot of scaling happening over there. So if you give a logo in pixels, because of this scaling, the logo might not come out proper in the final output. That is why generally the logos are made in a vector software such as Illustrator. You can even make logos on Figma, by the way. It's a free software and you should totally check it out. But it's a little difficult over there. Anyways, moving back to the subject, digitalization. Yeah, so basically, what I do over here is from all the sketches, I pick the best sketches which I like. I click pictures of those sketches, and then I start tracing over these sketches with the pen tool. I make like a grid over it. Then I start making basic traces over these sketches. You can see these examples over here. So that keeps on happening until I get like a proper output. Like I keep on remaking it again and again and again and again. As you can see, like you can see so many options over here on the screen. Uh, yeah. So once that is done, once your digital stage is done, you would then move to the presentation stage. Basically, in this stage, you would have three options ready, and you would make a complete presentation with mock-ups, and you would explain the client why these three options exist and what is the pros and cons of each of these options. So it's basically a complete presentation which shows these logos in action and why you made these logos. Now, I think there is a question in chat by Rahul who is asking, how do you finalize with colors for a logo? So that is an interesting question because when you start off, as you can see over here in the digitalization stage, actually I've added the colors over here, uh, but in reality, how I start off is I make all of these black and white. This screenshot was taken after I've completed the project. That is why I was just adding colors over here and seeing how all of these would look. But initially, you start the logo in black and white only because that helps you understand how the logo looks purely on looks. Because a color can also help, like a color can also then discriminate between two logos. Like you can like yellow more than blue or anything like that. So basically, you start off with a neutral color, which is black and white. And then once the logo's shape is finalized, then you can start looking at the adjectives for each of the direction. For example, let's look at this slide over here. Okay, I think I zoomed in. Yeah. Let's look at this slide. So in this slide, option number one, I had the adjectives of a joyful, warm, uh, basically joyful, warm, and it will also be loving. So that was the adjective for option number one, which is A. Option number two, B, had something like yummy. Yummy was one of the personality points for it. Yummy, bubbly, and modern was basically what I was going for in option number B. And in option number C, it was home style, kind of running. It needed to be dynamic. So all these personality points I had used to create the shapes for the logo. Now I also use these personality points to come up with the colors for the logo. For example, if it's loving and it has that heart in it, so I thought maybe like a slight pink color might work out well over here. And for the option number B, which has that like food item which has been written on, so maybe I thought a yummy yellow color would be great over there. And in the last option, I authenticity also, like home style authenticity was one of the personality points. So that is why I kept it maroon, which kind of imbibes that color. Sorry, imbibes that personality point. So I hope that answers the question. Moving on, after the presentation, the client would generally select one option, and I think they should select one option only. That should be defined by you before you start the project. We'll come to those bits later, how to handle clients. But once they select an option, you would refine that option. So all of these, like all of everywhere, you would have seen the logo with the eyes, but actually the older logo did not have the eyes, and it was not quite accurate. Like I think people who can spot the difference between, of course, apart from the eyes, people who can spot the difference in the logo shape from the old and the refined. You guys have the designer's eye. That is great job. But there are quite a few things which I have altered, balanced things out. And again, what I've mentioned over here, like once you're done with, once the logo is finalized, you generally remake the logo with a golden ratio. So this is not always required. As I mentioned in the second point, the golden ratio is just to maintain a natural balance in your logo. It just is there to maintain that natural balance so that things don't look quite odd or out of place. For example, this logo, I actually did not use any grid at all. I just eyeballed this entire logo. And in the end, it just happened to fall under the golden ratio. Like in the end, when I was just like trying to overlay this, it kind of happened to fall under it because I did not use the grid. It just like I just tried to keep it as natural and as flowing as possible, and it kind of just worked in the end. So of course that comes with time. Like with time, you will also be able to do that. But that is generally how it should be. You don't have to force the grid on your logo. It should just click in. So yeah, that is how you generally work with a grid. And it is also great to ask others for their opinion when it comes to the finalization stage, because at times when you have worked with your own logo for such a long time, you might not find these small errors and bits which others might quite easily identify. So it's great to ask for opinions as well in this stage. Okay, so you are done. You have finalized the logo. Basically, the process is complete and the logo is made. What now? Logo design is done, but your deliverables are not done because your client is not a designer and you have to be empathetic with them. So that is why you actually, once a project is done, you have to provide something which is called as a brand guideline. So what will this brand guideline have and why does this brand guideline exist? So a brand guideline is basically there to help a client understand how to use the brand which you have made for them when you are not around. So it's basically something which they can easily refer to when you're not there, and they can understand, okay, like this is how you use the logo, this is how you use the colors, what colors to use, what colors not to use, what are the brand personality points, what are the brand vision views, blah blah blah, everything. Like everything included in the brand strategy will be included in the brand guidelines. Also, how the logo is utilized will be included in the brand strategy. The color palette, the typography, imagery, everything will be there in the brand guidelines. Because basically you have to understand that the client cannot always keep on calling you up and like asking you, okay, Shubhang, tell me, like, is it okay to use my color on this, is it okay to change my color to xyz thing, is it okay to use my logo on this color or scale it like this. So all these things should be mentioned in that booklet, which the client should be able to pass on to their employees, to their collaborators. So that is your end deliverable, and that is quite important, because if you're not giving that, then basically you have just made something which you know how to use, but the client does not know how to use. So that is quite important on the long run. So what should you include in the final package? The final package of your logo design process would generally include these things: an EPS format. Of course, these things you will only provide if they're mentioned, by the way. If they're mentioned to the client, like I'll be giving you EPS, PNG, and JPEG. Because if they just want a PNG and JPEG, then you can, of course, you can only give them a PNG and JPEG. Of course, it depends on them. But when you charge your client, you have to keep, like, this is generally the basic thing. EPS would be vector files, PNG files, black and white logo files need to be given to them, and basically some logos for social media platforms which are on a colored background can be given to them in JPEG format. And then the brand guidelines, which includes the strategy and everything, will be in a PDF format. So that is the entire package, and that is the entire process for logo design. And that is also the end of our session, apparently. I mean, of course, we'll be having some Q&A right now. And any questions, if you have, you can just keep on, you can just ask me. But yep, that was it. Brand strategy in a nutshell, logo designing process in a nutshell. I'll be checking out the chats. Jay mentions, where should one ask for opinion? Sorry, opinions on their logos. Could you recommend any place or community? Uh, honestly, honestly, the way, honestly, what I do is I just keep two, three logos besides each other. I take a picture and I put them on Instagram with that like A or B option, and I just let my friends reply on that, just to get an understanding on which one works best, or if they have any feedback. So I don't have any specific community for it, but but yeah, I just ask them on social media. Anything else, guys? How do you start getting logo commissions? Is there any place to get the ball rolling? That is a great question. So by the way, before I answer that question, uh, I am actually going to be having another session today at 8 p.m. With Roshan, a buddy of mine, and we'll be talking about freelance and how to get clients and how to deal with clients, all those client shenanigans. We'll be talking about that today at 8 p.m. So you can also keep those doubts in for that session as well. But answering this question, how do you get started with logo commission? So, how I started off was that in the beginning, you might not get a lot of requests, of course, because People don't know that you exist as a designer. You only exist as a designer if your portfolio exists. So the first step to get that ball rolling would be to do some personal projects, do some experiments, and keep on building that portfolio. And once you have that portfolio, do a lot of marketing about it. Like, go everywhere, broadcast it to people. Like, oh, I made this project. Check it out. Give me your feedback. Blah blah blah. So what this helps is this actually helps them know that you are designing logos, because before that they might not know that. And once they know that you make logos and you make good logos, with time, once you do these personal projects, with time you'll keep on getting better at it. So once you keep on doing these logos, after a point they know that you're doing a logo and you're also good at doing these logos, so they will start reaching out to you. Okay, oh, like this friend of mine does logos and all, so you should check him out, blah blah blah. So that is how you build that uh, you build that kind of a connection with your network. Anything else? Oh yeah, by the way, the quote on the screen is just something which I live by. That's basically my motto. Good design not only solves problems but looks good while at it. Yash says, can you suggest me something so that I can improve my color sense? I design posters for my team, but my senior members always complain about the colors used. Okay. So, yeah. So there are a lot of hacks, by the way, for using colors. Uh, if you want to get into the theory end of it, you can check out uh, Introduction to Color Theory by The Future. There is a YouTube channel called as The Future, and I think these designers, most of today's designers know that channel. But if you don't, you should really check them out. They are really good. They are educating a lot of self-taught designers like me. But they have a video called as Basics of Color Theory, and it's really good. It really helps you understand how color theory works and how to pick these colors. But if you want to get into hacks and shortcuts, there is a site called as Coolers, which is Coolors, which it basically gives you like a it keeps on generating several color palettes, and generally the color palettes which it generates are quite like harmonious with each other. Okay. Pushkar says he's having trouble coming up with adjectives. Hmm. What let's I think we have time, so what you can do is uh, you can just let's do an example on this, have with adjectives. Okay, so how do you start off with these adjectives firstly? uh let's do an example. For example, let's take home grub only. Let's take home grub as an example. Okay, so uh the way we got started with the adjectives is, firstly you ask the the client, which is of course the person who is owning the brand. You ask them how they want to be perceived as a brand. Because see, once you ask that question, they will tell you, okay, we want to be perceived as fun, happy, loving. We want to be perceived as homely, genuine. So that would be your first cue. So your client will firstly tell you how the brand should be perceived, and if they don't tell you that, if they don't tell you like the brand should be perceived in XYZ adjectives, if they tell you, yeah, we want to be perceived to be happy, that's it. If they give you that much now, then it is your job to dig it further. Okay, why just happy? Why not these adjectives, like why not loving, why not XYZ, like why not these other adjectives, and why just happy? Why do you just want to be happy? Like the more you question, the more you understand what is their vision as a brand. And even if they don't have a vision, your questioning will help them get a vision. So your adjective session is mainly going to be revolving around, a lot of question and answer. And even if the client does not give you good adjectives, they will at least put you in a direction. Like if the client tells you, yeah, our brand should feel like a mother. Okay, this is not an adjective, they have just given you a statement. So you can break this answer down, and then you can make adjectives out of this. Okay, then what is a mother like? A mother is warm, homely, soft. So that is how you break down answers and prepare these adjectives. And once these adjectives are made, it's not that you would just take them and just start off with the project. You will take these adjectives, and as I mentioned in the rebrief state, you will take these adjectives, these brand personality points, and you will also show these to your client so that he also agrees, okay, yeah, this makes sense. These adjectives are what we feel the brand should be like, and we feel what is correct, and what our customers should perceive the brand as. So I hope that helps you solve uh, that doubt of coming up with adjectives. If you are just unable to come up with adjectives at all, then there is a site called as Power Thesaurus, and it really helps you come up with a lot of synonyms, adjectives. So you can just put down phrases and things, and it will just give you some adjectives as well, so that you can play around with what works the best for the brand. And in like keep this in mind, the entire brand strategy and the entire logo design process is a collaborative process. It's not that you have to alienate the client. The client also has some vision. Even if they don't have vision, there is a reason why they started the business. So you have to keep them in loop, you have to discuss things with them, you have to educate them with time as well. There are a lot of things which you will also learn from them. Well, if you don't have doubts now, you can ask me doubts later as well. So here's my mail ID, and the two Instagram IDs which you see on the bottom. Samba Khato Amba is my personal ID, and Material Designs is my professional ID, where I only put my client work. So I hope you guys had a good session.
Well, quite a productive one, Shubhang. I think the best part of the session was the anatomy comparison in the branding part and the ideation part, which actually boosted the authenticity of the session and also highlighted the dedication you put in your professional work. Not just professional work, but also how to make this session even a great experience. And after this, it's very clear that branding, more than product or service, is the study of human psychology and emotions.
Yep. It's actually a big rabbit hole, honestly. But I hope
Yeah,
I'm happy that at least I was able to scratch that at the surface level at least.
absolutely, absolutely. At last, I would like to highlight one thing about you, Shubham. You really make learning a fun activity, and if at all, I'm very sure about it. If at all I get a chance to speak socially in future, I'm sure of stealing some strategies from you.
Sure. Go ahead. You have this deck with you, so you can use it as well.
I know you hate the
It's great. Use it. Yeah.
I know you
Go
hate
on, go on.
the formalities, but these aren't the formalities. This is what actually you deserve. Thanks, brother, for joining with us, and
Yo.
we are equally excited to for your next session at 8 p.m.
So
Yeah,
thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me in. A great start for Damit session number 2.